Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And today's episode is brought to you by the word "but," as in yeah, but. And the first thing that I remember hearing about the word "but" was that "but" was a way of saying ignore everything that comes before this word, because what I really mean comes after the word. And sentences like, well, I really like the sound of that, but I can't afford it. Well, I know it's going to be okay, but I can't stop worrying about it. That in our mind, we sort of go, yeah, but. And in fact, that's so known as a sort of a typical human psychology thing that one of the techniques I remember learning as a sales technique was called reversing buts. So if somebody said, well, I really like the sound of this, but I can't afford it, you would say back to them, so you can't afford it, but you really like the sound of it? And you can probably feel it's like, oh yeah, well, that's true too. Or the other one I gave as an example, well, I know it's going to be okay, but I can't stop worrying about it. So you can't stop worrying about it, but you know it's going to be okay. And we just hear it differently. But the first time where I really saw the way that we can use "but" against ourselves was in a conversation with one of my early mentors in the Three Principles of Understanding, Elsie Spittle. And if you've never met Elsie, I'm sure you can find her online. You can watch some of her YouTubes or read some of her wonderful books. But she is a very sweet, tough as nails, but incredibly sweet older woman. And, sort of a grandmother figure to me. Now, she may kill me when she hears this, but that's who she is to me. That's how I think of her. Which is why I was so surprised when we were talking one day and I was sharing all the good things that were happening because of what I was seeing. I was sharing how much I was enjoying my experience of day-to-day life, how much I was enjoying the sort of presence and quiet that were becoming my sort of normal way of being, how liberated I was feeling from fear that I didn't know that I was scaring myself with, and stress that I didn't know I was stressing myself with, and pressure I didn't know I was putting on myself. And that as I saw those things, I experienced so much more freedom. And I was sharing all this with her, and then I started to go into my litany of "but." I'd say, well, yeah, I mean, I feel so much better, but I know I'm going to forget. And then I'm going to get caught back up in my thinking. Or, well, yeah, I know it's inside out, but this thing I still can't quite see because it really does look like this is causing my experience. And okay, it's wonderful that I can share this with others, but there are always going to be people that I don't seem to be able to reach. And she just turned to me and she said, "Michael, screw the "but." And then she kind of hurt herself and turned beet red in embarrassment. But I knew what she meant. And it had never occurred to me that just because I was capable of thinking of problems, of thinking of things to put after the word "but" in the sentence, didn't mean it was a good idea. It didn't mean I had to do it, and it didn't mean it was worth doing. And I remember having a similar conversation with a client shortly afterwards where they went, well, okay, so there's all this stuff that I've seen that's been really helpful, but I've got a bunch of things I've written down that I'm still stuck on, and I remember saying to them, well, what if you didn't? And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what if you didn't bring up a list of all the things you can't figure out? What if you just stayed with what you do see? What if what you already see is enough? Not just because it probably is enough to live a happy, fulfilled life, but because when you stay with what you do have, When you focus on what you're working with, on what you've got going for you, on what is working for you, it expands. So what if you didn't yeah but yourself? What if you weren't constantly looking for the exceptions to the rule, to the potential problems? Now, I'm not saying you mustn't or you shouldn't or it's bad. I'm just saying if you are somebody who spends a lot of time after the but, see what happens if you start spending more of your time before the but. More of your time with what is working, with what you do know, with what you do see. And I expect what you'll find is that if you're willing to screw the but and just stay with what you know before the but, not only will your life get even more enjoyable, but you'll also find that you know more and more and more. Have fun, learn heaps, and I'll talk with you soon.